My name is Mark Smolik, and I have the privilege of serving as the Chief Legal Officer for DHL Supply Chain Operations in the Americas. The most important thing when you're even thinking about KPIs for the legal department is how are you going to use them? In our setting, there's KPIs that we use tied to our team members. Are they satisfied? Are they engaged? Do they feel that we are communicating with them appropriately? And to ensure that we are, we take surveys every single year. They're referred to as employee opinion surveys to gauge their insight and to receive their feedback with regard to how we are performing, particularly as leadership and as a team. And we reduce those to KPIs. What's the percentage of people that feel we're communicating effectively or not? That is one use of KPIs. But the other that I see many people in law departments struggle with, whether they're at the top of the legal department, legal operations, or somewhere in between, is what metrics really matter. And oftentimes people are looking for that magic wand to say, oh, here's the 3 or 4 or 5 or more metrics that are most important to law departments. And in my experience, what I found the hard way is how not to approach metrics. A number of years ago, I came out with one piece of paper that I presented to the board, and it had 4 squares on it. And it contained information that I thought was important. Revenue to attorneys, and multiple other metrics. Many people are reporting, only to see the members of the board completely indifferent. And my CFO afterwards telling me, nobody cares about what you're reporting. And it's not because of a disrespect. It's because people that are running businesses, and this is true in any corporate law department, no matter the size of the company, all are reporting on things that are most important to them. Their revenue, their earnings, fatalities, incidents, etc. So for the law department, the most important thing when it comes to metrics is understanding what is it that your business wants to hear from you. It's not with regard to how many attorneys do I have to $1 billion worth of revenue. It's not with regard to how many hours my people are working. Those are all part of my employee opinion survey information with regard to their engagement. It is more attuned to how many lawsuits am I defending or handling for each area of our business. Information that will identify for our business operations areas of sensitivity, risk opportunities, whether it's mitigation or identification, so that they can go back into their own operations, implement changes that ultimately lead to better productivity and fewer risks that they manage with. So the most important thing when you're thinking of metrics is don't do this alone. Whether it's a trusted business advisor, whether it's the head of HR, you were head of finance, whoever it may be, or maybe your head of operations, ask them what is most important. And conform to their desire, their needs, and their desires so that they've got information that's meaningful. I call it meaningful metrics or metrics that matter. It is what matters to the business, not necessarily what matters to you, because there's a big difference. And for established law departments that have been around for quite some time, particularly before the age of digitalization, a lot of your knowledge, particularly with regard to your data, exists in file folders, somewhere in file cabinets. So it's very hard to harvest. What I found 2 sources that have been extremely valuable for us. One, with regard to our external counsel, they've got more data on us than we probably have on ourselves. And we have tasked them with the responsibilities of reporting to us how many lawsuits they're defending, how many claims, and we slice and dice that information so that we can get down to the specific data sets that allows us to make informed decisions with regard to what do we need to change. And since the age of digitalization, surely over the past 10 years, we've got a lot of that information in-house as well, but it's scattered all over the place. You've got to start somewhere, and the easiest way to start, particularly if somebody is new to this, is start with your external counsel. You task them with the responsibility and make it clear that you're not going to pay them. It is your data to come back to you with data in a format that you can use to communicate with regard to the business where your challenges lie. Yeah, the most important thing to focus on is the process. The one by which you will gather the data and then ultimately harness the data. And make sure you have a process in place so that when new data comes in, it gets plugged into the old data and it continuously refreshes itself. You can't expect that you're going to be able to open up your database of claims and come out with metrics that are meaningful, even if you know what the business is looking for. You've got to give some real serious thought in an organized fashion as to how you're going to organize it and what you're going to do with it. Because ultimately, every bit of data that you have collectively tells a story. And whether it is a story about where you are suffering from claims, where you are spending money, perhaps tied to arbitration matters or litigation, etc., collectively, that data, when brought together, will only help you drive efficiencies in your organization, and then most likely, along with that, driving costs low. Yeah, there is. I envy the guys in the business who have figured this out from decades ago, where they're reporting on their revenue and their earnings and multiple other metrics that are just built into the DNA of financial statements and balance sheets. There are so many different ways of looking at data in law firms and in law departments in particular, but that people struggle with, where do I start? Don't try to boil the ocean. Most corporate law departments deal in two primary areas of law. It's either labor and employment, which means there's multiple employment-related claims, or with regard to contracts, to a lesser extent with regard to litigation. But for me, if I was going to do it all over again and I had to pick an area, I would pick my employment claims area. I would look at the common denominators, and I would evaluate how am I going to gather that data, evaluate the propensity of the plaintiff, particularly when they file suit or file a claim against me, and then use that information, even though it may not be a metric, to do something as simple as to go to the involved businesses and say, do you know, for example, you have 20 equal employment opportunity commission claims that are costing you X. They may say, well, you've had that year after year. But if you couple that with information from the finance or the sales team that says in order for us to have $1 to spend to settle a claim, we have to generate multiple times that in revenue, then you've got something to really drive home the message. In our own organization, it's public knowledge. In order for me to have $1 to spend, the sales department has to generate $30 in revenue. You think of a $1,000 claim is $30,000 in sales. Business people get it when you relate the story that way. Don't just convey it as a lawyer. Think of a way that they're going to accept the message. Find a mentor. Here we are at Legal Week, one of the most fascinating conferences of its kind anywhere in the world. And I can't tell you how exciting it is for me to continue to run into people who are continuing to progress in their legal operations, careers, or what have you. But there are so many people here that have been there, done that, understand it, that if you can get the younger generation thinking of going into legal ops, to partner with any one or two of them, all the better. How do you do it? Join organizations such as CLOC, CLOC, or some of the newer organizations that I know, for example, County Brenton is coming out with, and others that are really providing opportunities for people that grow in this space. But if you've got a propensity, something along working on a team to manage a business, because that's what the law department is all about. It is one of the most exciting areas to be.